Hello guys, welcome back to Haymanager once again for another tactical transfers. Today I thought I'd do an interesting one. I've sort of seen lately a transfer that I admire quite a lot actually. It's Guehi from Chelsea to Crystal Palace. So Guehi, I think it's around about 12.5 million. I'll just double check altogether. But yeah, an interesting one. He has signed £18 million, from Chelsea to Crystal Palace. He's an interesting player, not going to lie. He's a very interesting player. He's played very well over the last 2 seasons. He's actually played for, I believe he played for Swansea one season, and then the season after that, let me just double check really quick because I want to make sure I get this completely correct because I don't want to get this wrong at all. So yeah, he went to Swansea on loan, and then he went to Swansea again. So he's gone to Swansea twice, and he's played absolutely phenomenally for them. And I think he deserved a transfer away from Chelsea to try and get first-team football. And it's a brilliant pickle. A 21-year-old for that sort of money, 18 million. He's going to be a very strong centre-back and sits at that left centre-back role. So I'll just quickly show you the team I think will be playing for Crystal Palace next season. It's an interesting one. It's a sort of team where they're not going to be spending a lot of money. We might see, for example, Townsend might be leaving to go to Everton, which I don't quite understand why. But he might be going there regardless, but we'll have to see what happens with that. Zaha, obviously, as ever, there's a lot of transfer speculation whether or not he'll be staying or if he'll be going. I think he'll stay once again because it's a decent side to build yourself around. But yeah, in net, Guaita, very good player, a very good goalkeeper, should I say. Really good in between the sticks. Really good. And Van Aanholt on the left, I think he'll stay for another season, but 30 years of age, probably have to replace him next year. I've got to try and focus on what's happening now and how they can sort of fix their team for the better. Guehi obviously is going to start. I think he has to start. 21 years of age, fantastic, strong, tall, dominant in the air. Reads the game pretty well for a young player. Excuse me, I think he's really good, really good. Tyreek Mitchell as well. Can't rate him highly enough. For someone to come through to replace Wan-Bissaka, he had a fantastic start to the year last year. A bit more technical going forward. Got 2 assists to his name and a goal before obviously his injury, but really good. Then in the midfield, Milivojevic, I think is very, very good. Sound midfielder with Riedewald. Riedewald, should I say, had a tricky start, but his start ended up playing pretty well, actually, I've got to admit. And obviously Zaha played in a sort of a striker role, left forward, left wing role. Eze through the middle as sort of an attacking midfielder, as he does best, drifts very well, drops deep as well, which I adore about him. Then Townsend on the right-hand side. Townsend just a very, very good player overall, really. You can't really say much about him and diss him too much, because he does play very well. So that's out of the starting 11, I'm looking at 9 players staying. For now anyway, you've got to think about this tactically. Next year, they can bring in a new left back, and they can bring in, obviously, a right winger if need be, or a new central midfielder. But for this season, this is what I'm thinking. So the first player to partner Guehi at centre-back, because they've got Gary Cahill, who's 35 now. I think they've got Kouyaté, who for me just doesn't cut it at being a centre-back. He's more of a backup midfielder now. Whether or not he'll play instead of Riedewald, Viera might fancy him, but I think Kouyaté may have had his day as well. He's not incredible. It's like playing Eric Dyer at centre-back. It makes no sense. So another centre-back to come in, because Saka as well, I think much like Eric Bailly or Davinson Sanchez, there seems to be a collective of this type of player where they're very eccentric, dive into tackles, not the smartest of players, but physically, obviously very, very good. But Saka himself as well, getting on a bit. So they need a new centre-back again to sort of partner Guehi. Someone that's had a bit of experience, isn't too old, isn't too young, and that for me is Chris Mepham. Chris Mepham from Bournemouth. Bournemouth failed to get anywhere near the Premier League. They've got Scott Parker, who's sort of pretty good at getting teams back into the Premier League, as we've seen him do with Fulham, but hasn't managed to keep them there. So he's at Bournemouth now, Scott Parker. Mepham's at Bournemouth as well. I want to see whether or not Mepham would want to leave, because to me, he moved from Brentford, I think it was 3 years ago now, that he moved from Brentford to Bournemouth for around about 12 million. And then at Bournemouth, he had a season in the Premier League where it didn't work out at all for that Bournemouth side. They then fell off massively, Bournemouth. They sold Ramsdale, they've sold Ake, they've sold Wilson. A lot of their players, Harry Wilson as well, actually left from loan and returned to Liverpool. So a lot of players that you think Bournemouth would want to keep have been disappearing. And I don't think Mepham would be too encouraged by this because of their lack of spending power and attraction. Bournemouth have really fell into a bad hole here. Mepham, I think, will leave. I think Mepham, if prodded, if he wants to go, I reckon Bournemouth will let him go and they'll try and rebuild Bournemouth. A few tactical transfers here and there, bring in a few different players. I think they'll do pretty well themselves, Bournemouth. But Mepham, for me, would be ideal. He's 23. He's be around 20 million or something around that, which is not a lot for Crystal Palace because you're looking between the two players, the centre-back and the striker, probably around about 10 or 15 million pound each. So Mepham, for me, probably about 15 million that they'd let him go for, 15, 20 million. He's Welsh. He sort of fits the bill for this Crystal Palace rebuild that they're going through. He's 23, obviously can build on that. His stats, well, let's just have a look at his stats first and foremost. His stats altogether, let me just get them up on the screen. 24 games played last year because he picked up a bit of an injury. 46 tackles, 9 blocks, 76 clearances. So he's very good at being the man at the back, being sort of the rock, allowing sort of the other centre-back who partners him to push out a bit more and can mop up the mistakes, which I'm very impressed by. And in the air, he's not bad himself either. 67% of the battles won. But for me, yeah, Chris Mepham has to join. I don't know why he wouldn't join. Or wouldn't be an option for Crystal Palace anyway, because he is phenomenal at being that second on that right hand side as well. Great on that right hand side. Great at being the second man who can drop deep and cover the centre back. Then for me, we've got to go for the forward role. The forward role is an iconic one. We've seen Benteke play that role at the moment. He's now 30. He had 10 goals last year and looks like he might be able to sort of come back into fruition. But we saw not Andre Ayew, Jordan Ayew play 33 games last year, and I think he got 1 goal, or he might have not even scored. So Jordan Ayew for me is a player that probably you won't see playing much of, and definitely will be someone that wants to leave. So this first of the two forwards, now the forwards looking obviously to get rid of Jordan Ayew as I was saying, but the first of the two forwards I'm going to go for, and it really does rely on how ambitious Crystal Palace are going to be. Are they going to try and push for the mid-table again, or are they going to try and push even higher up to try and get into Europe? Because we've seen West Ham, who were, well, they were media predicted them to get quite low, near relegation zone, fight the relegation battle. We then saw them get Europe, nearly a Champions League spot. Do I think Crystal Palace will be pushing that high now? If they do, there's a man for the job, and it's Edouard. Edouard, we'll have a look at him very quickly. Odsonne Edouard plays for Celtic. He's an absolute megastar. He's comparable to probably that of Anthony Martial from Manchester United. French, again, another Frenchman. But at the age of 23, I think Celtic, he's in towards his last year of his contract now. So Celtic are probably going to try and cash in relatively quickly. I believe he was on Leicester's radar during the time when Leicester, obviously, I think they've just missed out on Champions League. I think they've got Europa League. But I think he is on the radar for around about £15 million, which is a bargain. 31 games, 18 goals, 4 assists, 50% of his shots on target. This man's an absolute killer, and I think he's going to be phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. If, obviously, Crystal Palace decide to sign him. This man would probably be one for the future. You're looking at maybe making an immediate impact regardless as well. So he could be the one that's trying to spurs them forward to get that Europa League football. He'd link up incredibly well, I think, with Zaha and Townsend, and especially Eze, as that's a very, very nice looking front three, front four. If you have Zaha, who's very good at cutting in and very tricky, with Edouard, who's very good at the ball at his feet and incredible finisher. Then you've got Eze, who you've seen is phenomenal at taking players on one-on-one. Then that's solid 2 in the midfield. You get your back 4 in. I think it opens up a lot more for Crystal Palace. But then if they're looking to sort of rebuild, there's another option. He's 22. He's from Ajax. He had a year out on loan at FC 20s. Pereira da Silva Danilo. Now, this man, He's been on the radar for a long time. He's played in the Ajax young team, which is obviously the under-23s, or the B team, as you would probably call it, in the more European, English sides anyway. He is an incredible little talent. 33 matches played in the Eredivisie last season. Ajax are probably going to try and keep a hold of him. 17 goals, 5 assists. He's been on the radar of like Tottenham, or I think Arsenal as well at some point. Manchester United may have even looked at him when he was 19. You see all these things about Tottenham. He was definitely on the Tottenham radar because Tottenham tried to sign him a few years ago from Ajax, but he stayed there, wanted to try and get a bit of first-team football. But 42% of his shots are on target. He's obviously had 22 goal contributions in 33 games at the age of 22 in the Eredivisie. And for FC20 as well, not a fantastic side. So he's trying to prove himself. Danilo's trying to prove himself, and I think his price, his transfer market value is around about 4.7 million. They're probably letting go for 12. They did sign him for around about 3. Letting go for 12. This would be a different direction. You're looking at perhaps bringing in someone who can bolster maybe a 3 in midfield and let Eze go out onto the right, Zaha on the left, Danilo up front. He's a very good sort of, like, how would you call it? He's good at positioning. He keeps himself ready in the box. He's phenomenal going forward. So yeah, I think Danilo would be the other option if they obviously want to try and go for a rebuild that's a bit younger. But yeah, for me, it's got to be Edouard to play up front, and Mepham as well. So yeah, that's Crystal Palace for you. An interesting one, a very interesting one. Whether or not they'll actually capitalise on being able to get these transfers in using the money if they obviously sell for some players, and they've had a few years where they've had the Wan-Bissaka deal and not signed many people from that. Guehi's a nice little option for 18 million. I think it's a brilliant pickup. They've got a few that they've got the right pieces at the moment. They just need 1 or 2 more, like the striker and centre back, and maybe a new left back and a fantastic central midfielder. And they'd be challenging definitely mid-table minimum, pushing into that top half of the table for sure. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Crystal Palace. If you did enjoy the video, please as ever leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and yeah, I shall catch you in the next episode. From me, Alex, have a great day. Ciao.